we were one of the 3 groups on bridging the research and developer divide, which sort of contemplated a number of ideas this morning. There's the bridge. Judith chaired, George wrote slides. Apart from that, it was me, Ole, Tim, and Matt Shreve. The purpose of breakout was to understand how to build the bridge, I suppose. Which button do I press? Yeah. So, conclusion. We sort of took this idea, drawing on Judith's talk this morning, the idea of the end user developer, or the researcher developer as the SSI, as you referred to. This person who, this role does exist, these people do exist. There are people who can sit between the PIs, if you like, the scientific, the hardcore scientific end users, and the hardcore software developers, and actually have a successful conversation both ways. This idea of understanding both banks of the river. Ways to do this, either having an end user developer who is maybe an RA who has started writing the software because the tools needed by the research group and has got so far and has understood they've got so far and understands they can't get much further without expert help. Or by taking an actual software developer and embedding them in the research group and saying, go work with them for a year, see where you get to. They need to be able to have both sides of the conversation. They need to be able to advocate one perspective to the other perspective. And really understanding that the engagement is necessary is kind of a major step forwards, I think. Understanding that cultural divide exists and being able to persuade both sides that you're not taking the same language, but that's okay. You know, talk through me and we can all do this better. One of the whinges that we had in the group, I was whinging about this role is not easily recognised at the moment in terms of either the way money flows in funding through FEC, or the way the contributions of this bridging was recognised in REF, for instance. Getting a software engineer, someone who you really understand you need in your team to create the tools that you need to do your research, sort of hiding that role under the guise of a researcher or describing them in some different way just to get the entire thing funded, it's kind of silly. Because the entire system is changing slowly to recognise this increasing reliance on software in research, and the importance of this bridging role. And more needs to be done to recognise the contributions of these folk. If you begin with the model of a researcher developer, an end user developer, so an RA who's come in to do medical physics, they find themselves writing software instead, which may be okay, they might quite enjoy it, but it means the time they're spending writing software, and maybe not writing as software as well as somebody who's better trained, but the time they're spending is not time they're spending on the research, is not time that's going directly into something which is greffable. How do you get the recognition going then? There's a sort of change that needs to happen. So those were the key conclusions. We had to think about, okay, what can we do about this? An open question we would ask here. EPSA did have, possibly still do have open, a discipline hopping scheme, which might promote this sort of embedding software engineers in a research team. A question we weren't quite sure whether someone who's a hardcore software engineer was eligible to go and work in a biological research group for a while. Has anyone here had experience that's done this sort of thing? Does anyone know of any groups who've taken up the scheme and actually swapped around?
I know someone that's done the MRC one, and they've got a software engineer working in the pharmacology department.
Okay. Do you know if it's
someone from
successful?
Somebody from stats who does software engineering. Yeah.
Do you know if that's working as everyone's hoping?
So Victor's very happy, and Nigel, his boss, is very happy as well.
Okay. We thought it might be useful. Whether it's possible, we don't know. Are there any reputable journals that accept papers with a strong software development focus? Many of us here would be interested in finding out. And more generally, how do you measure the impact that software engineering has on research? I imagine everyone in this room would make the assertion that yes, good software engineering is important to do better research. Is that really true? Have we measured it? David's measured it.
So one of the things that I would say there actually is good software engineering with everything will lead to a product. And I'm sure that, okay, sorry. And that's very measurable in impact.
Yes, that's true. You can measure it in a number of high-profile cases, but there are the smaller ones as well, where good engineering within a group has actually made an impact on the research. Mural gave us a good example this morning. A fairly small-scale thing. And actually, that's a half, so that may actually have a broader impact. But how can we measure that? And how can we feed that into things like case studies and say, look, this really is valuable? And UK research base, you need to start to change the way you think, the way you value these things, measure these things. So generally speaking, the discussion is there. Researchers should be developers, should be specialist developers, etc. Go back to that.
Have I missed anything, folks?
And where we got to. How can we feel valued?
It's an eternal question, I think.
So I have a question and a point actually on one of the things that you had in your conclusions. The other thing you'll find if you're advertising for so we have lots of software development jobs in LERC that we have a lot of problems filling because in some ways we advertise RAs with software development plus a bit of RA job description. We don't get software developers because they don't look at RA jobs, and we don't get RAs because they don't want to do software development.
That's exactly the experience I related to group.
But at the same time, it is, and I would assert here, software development is not a university's core business, and we shouldn't be trying to make it such.
Agree.
The reality is it's never going to be because teaching students business and doing the.
Can I just stop you from letting him ask any more questions?
That's bad.
He's finishing the report back from our session.